Okay, so this year, since tonight is Mamish like Baomer, it's Mamish B'Yoyim, it's, you have bonfires going on, So I want to go into just some of the ideas of what's the premise of Lag Baomer, really, and there's a tremendous premise that most people are unaware of. So I'll start off with a fundamental question. There are two people that Klal Yisrael celebrates, tremendously. One is Rachel Imenu. Think about that. She died in Yud Aleph Cheshvan. And people celebrate that. Thousands of people go to the Keva on Yud Aleph Cheshvan. And that's how, and then Mispal. It's Rachel Imenu, and so on. Mother of Gula, as they say, And the second one that everybody celebrates is Reb Shimon, Lag Baomer. Tremendous celebration. there's got to be I think by now there's 200,000 people there.
Quarter of a million.
How much?
Quarter of a million.
Quarter of a million people. I remember when I went in 1965, I remember I was a boch, I slept over on the hard ground. It was really, it's a bonfire. Even then with thousands and thousands of people. People camp out there for a week. I don't know if you realize that. People, a lot of people, I remember, I think Mosie's father, whatever, and there was sheep walking around. It was just like a ride, sheep walking around because they shechted the sheep, And I don't want to say everything else was going around, but there was a lot of stuff. It was like, it was for a week. To me it looked like a circus.
Let me ask the loaded side.
Loaded with animals.
Is it kedai what they
the stuff
have?
that they give off, but there was a tremendous simcha. Reb Shimon.
Is it kedai what they have there today with the bonfire, to justify a massive full Shabbos preparing for it?
I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I won't go into that. Oh yeah. There's that too. Anyway, so Reb Shimon, like I say, quarter of a million people there. What's going on? What does Klal Yisrael know? Why do they do this? Now already it's everybody goes and and so on. So Reb Shimon, and it's like an outing. It's like an annual outing, and so on. So the real question you have here is, what is this stam, an asifa, gathering that Klal Yisrael chapped, that they grabbed? Was there something much greater going on in terms of Lag Baomer and so on? We know that the Ari used to walk from Tzfas to Meron. Every Lag Baomer, and he used to walk, there was no cars, 15, let's see, he was born in 1542 or something like that. He died in 1572. He was born in 1544. He died in 72, 38 years old. And he used to walk from Meron, like I said, from Tzfas to Meron. If you walk straight, I think it's about 6 or 7 miles. Not if you drive, obviously, and so on, And he used to dance with an old man. They said that was Reb Shimon, It's interesting, that's the Ari. But you see there's a tremendous inyan. And Lag Baomer, Reb Shimon, and so on. The question is why? What do they know that we don't do? What's going on here? This is the question. But what's very important to understand is whatever Klal Yisrael does, whatever the Jewish people do, whether they know why they do it or they don't, especially when you talk about an en masse, you're not talking about four people. A quarter of a million people go there. It's like, and there has to be opinions to it. It's like the Gemara says. It's funny. There's a whole incident. Hillel, how to become a Nasi. So the ones who were in charge of Klal Yisrael was Bnei B'Seira. Anyway, it once happened that I think Shabbos, what was it? A Pesach fell out on Shabbos. So and you have to do a Korban Pesach. So what do? You see, you have to, what do you do with the knife? Because with the knife you have to shecht and so on and so forth. So there's a big problem that they forgot. The Bnei B'Seira forgot what the halacha was. Are they allowed to do that? And so and carry the knife, whatever. So they forgot the halacha, So what they said was, we don't remember what the halacha was. If you're allowed to carry the knife or not, but let's see what the Jews do. We won't tell them the psak. and they wound up, they took the knife, put it behind the sheep, I think behind the ears, whatever, and the sheep carried it, and so on, So the Gemara says, Im einam neviim, if Klal Yisrael are not neviim, b'nei neviim heim. They are the sons of neviim, which means that Klal Yisrael itself can divine through what's called a collective ruach hakodesh, what you really have to do, even though they don't know why. That's what it means. If they're not neviim, so they would know the answer. B'nei neviim heim, we come from neviim, and they clearly knew the pnimis and so on. You know why? So they knew what to do, and that's exactly what happened, and so on. Anyway, so I say the same thing here. If Klal Yisrael gathers by Rochel Imeinu and Rabbi Shimon, then there has to be a tremendous, what's called pnimius onuk, very deep reason. So the question is, what is that? Remember, so there's two huge celebrations. Rabbi Shimon is bigger, maybe because it's in the whatever, it's fast anyway. In Meron, it's fast. The whole Galil is mystical, and maybe Rochel Imeinu is more colder then because it's more toward winter. Whatever. Question is, what's going on? Okay. In order to understand that, you have to understand certain fundamental ideas. You have to go all the way back to Noach, a long time ago. Noach, we know there was a Mabul, right? We know there was a flood and so on. What was this all about, really? We know Noach was, from Adam Rishon till Noach was 10 generations. 10 generations. You want to close the door? We know there were 10 generations, so why were there 10 generations? What is going on? So the idea is, which is very interesting, the Rabbi wanted to bring a tikkun to the Bria to rectify creation in the first 10 generations. Each generation would rectify one sphera. We know there are 10 spheres, right? There are 10 elemental forces that create all reality. And he wanted to rectify it all in those 10 generations. Adam failed to do it. Then you had Cain and Hevel, they failed. And then it proceeded onwards until Noach. So what the Rosh wanted, the Ramchal says this, he wanted to rectify in a second, in 10 generations, all the spheres, and therefore bring the Geula. But what happened? Instead of there being a tikkun of those 10 generations, right, it was an incredible kilkel. The world, by Ben Noach, there was Gzela, there was everything going on there. It was a hefkevelt there and so on and so forth. So instead of rectifying creation after 10 generations, they were makalkel, they damaged creation terribly, terribly so, to such an extent where they made it almost impossible to be toiv. You have to remember, if you live in a generation that's kula ra, where everybody's sinning, what's the probability that you're going to walk out righteous? Not very well. In other words, the more evil the generation, the greater is the probability that you will fail to do your job, which is do whatever the mitzvahs were, 7 mitzvahs and so on, And in those generations, it was so bad that they almost destroyed Bechira. Means it's true that you still have free will, but the destruction is so bad, the evil is so bad, the evil is so bad that the probability of them doing the tikkun in the 10th generation by Noach, Chomas and so on, was almost nil. So the Rosh said, listen, that's it. I mean, in a generation where it's hardly in Bechira, it's over with. But Noach and of course his children, the righteous and so on, I will continue with them. But basically, the Rosh said, it was over with. Why is that? Okay, why is that? How much evil was there? How much? So in those days, what was interesting is if a person did chet, those days it was possible for the people in that generation to destroy the world. Normally a person does a chet, right? And then what happens is, the whole concept of the Yanika, if a person has a chet, then a Satan grows strong. If you remember the concept that the Satan takes the Kedusha, if you do a sin, then he's able to take the Kedusha, his unique. He nourishes from that holiness that you would have got through the mitzvah. He takes it and he becomes incredibly strong. Okay? That's what happens by the Satan. So the kilkel, the damage, and that's tremendous damage. And in those days, every person could misaken or makalkel the bria. There was no such thing as a Jew then, we know that. It was mankind, as I mentioned before, because it was the original intent of the Moshe that the Jews not be the misaken. They are not the ones who rectify. Avram, that's only part of it. What Moshe wanted is all mankind to rectify creation. That's why Adam wasn't Jewish at all. He was just man, mankind. So therefore, what happened was, each one had the ability to do the tikkun, rectify the creation, or do the kilkel, damage it, in an unlimited way. Unlimited. So therefore the Moshe allowed that because it's only fear. So what happened is they brought, the amount of sinning that they did was so enormous that all the kedusha that they would have brought down went to the Satan. So he was incredibly powerful. You see, so instead of the tikkun, what they did is an incredible kilkel, or damage. Now, if you want to know how much damage did he do, or how much kedusha, how much force was in the hands of the Satan, so the Ramchal says something interesting. He says, what was there? There was the teva, the ark, right? What's the ratio of the volume of the ark to the volume of water on the entire planet? Enormous. That's ridiculous. And remember, the water went over the mountains. So if you look at the ratio of the volume of this ark to the volume of water on the planet, that's how much. So the water was the tumah, or the sparks of holiness, whatever, that the Satan had. And the only amount that was not in the hands of the Satan was the volume of the ark. It's incredible. Whoever heard of that? You talk about a proportion that's like one cubic yard compared to 50 quadrillion cubic yards. So basically, the Satan had everything. So Baruch said, in such a matzav, in such a condition, it's over with. There's no bechira here anymore.
But Noach did have bechira.
What?
Noach exercised bechira correctly.
Yeah, he did. He was the only one, basically.
It's
everybody
really
else. Yeah. So therefore, the Ramchal points out in the Kinnis Hashem Tzavakas that was the Kinnis Hashem Tzavakas. It's one of his farm. That's how much was there, which is incredible. So Moshe therefore decided to destroy, Ki Yetzer Leva Odom Rak Ra is all day. All they do is think of evil and so on. So Moshe decided. Now, so what do we have? We have 10 generations that the Moshe wanted everybody to do righteous, and in the 10th generation, what would have happened? Then probably Noach would have been Mashiach, and the Or Rishon, the Messianic light, would have descended. The Messianic light, or Chokhmah, would have come to the world, you see. And that would have been the end, basically. Instead, what happened? There was all this incredible Kedusha that was given over to the Satan. So the amount of Kedusha that gave over to the Satan was equivalent to the volume of water, and so on. Why was there a mabul? Water. Because water is the analog of Torah. Many times you find that. Water is an analog of Torah. And there are many similarities. Just like Torah, your water is a universal solvent. It's universal. And you can't survive without it, right? Torah is universal. It's all over. And you can't survive without it. And so on. There are a tremendous amount of similarities between Torah and water. But anyway, water is the physical analog of Torah. So instead of the Or Rishon, the Messianic light coming down, what happened, right? That Messianic light that came down was what? Was in the form of water. So instead of enlightening mankind, it just killed them all. That water was the Messianic light that should have come down. Except the physical analog of that water came down and wiped out the entire generation. Interesting. Comes out that the mabul really is the physical analog of the Torah. That's what the mabul was. The Or Rishon. The Or Rishon in its physical form, right? And it destroyed the entire planet. Interesting. Comes out, therefore, that the mabul was really, should have been the Geula, redemption, Instead, it became the destruction of mankind. That's how you begin to understand Noach. You see. Okay, everybody got that? Important distinction. It's a whole different story of Noach, obviously, you know. This is not the Noach way we learn about, you know. That's classic Ramchal, you know. So it comes out that really the 10 generations from Adam to Noach should have been the Geula, to be sucking everything. And they failed. So instead of not being Misakin, rectifying creation, they contaminated it by giving all the Kedusha that they did because of their Chatoim. They gave all the holiness that should have gone to them. They gave it to the Satan who had incredible strength and so on. And Hashem said, enough is enough. There's not enough Kedusha for this place to survive. And one of the main reasons was what? Is because the Hashem said, you can destroy the whole creation. He gave man the ability to take away all the Kedusha and give all of it to the Satan. Which would mean that there's a threshold, you should know. That in those days, if the Satan would acquire too much Kedusha, too much Tikbor Sarah, proliferation of evil and so on, then that could destroy the entire world, which is exactly what the Hashem did. Fortunately for us, there was a man called Noach. You know, it would be interesting to Claire to think, what happens if there was no Noach? What happens if everybody was evil? You know, one could think about that. You know, what would the Rebbe Hashem have done? Wiped out everything and start all over again with a new Adam Rishon?
You say Noach was a breed that the Rebbe Hashem created for taking idol. Just like he created Avram.
But remember,
he created Yitzchak and Yaakov.
Well, yeah, but what he did...
But Esav was supposed to also be an Avon.
Yeah, I mean, remember, in the end they all had Bechira. I mean, no, God doesn't force them to be tzaddikim. He probably, what the Baruch probably did, is like, why didn't he put the Neshama of Avram into Adam Rishon? You ever want to think about that? And then, Adam Rishon, a.k.a. Avram Avinu, wouldn't have done the Chet, and Adam would have brought Bin Ben Mashiach, and that's, you wouldn't need all this 5,773 years of we have to go through all this Golos and all that. But the Russian didn't want to do. These are among the mysteries of creation. Why doesn't the Russian do things that... Because the Russian knows that the Neshama of Avram will not be choitei, will not sin. So why doesn't he take that Neshama and put him in the beginning, and you avoid this, the whole, this whole journey of trying to do the tikkun. These are among the mysteries of creation, and so on. Anyway, because the Russian knows the future, and he knows that what? That Adam is going to sin. Because it's Adam with that neshama. So just put somebody else who won't sin. Anyway, that's among the many mysteries of creation and so on. And anyway, so this is what happened basically by Noach. Okay? So therefore when the Baruch said, and after the Mabul, that's why it says, V'niftechu what? Arubas Hashemayim, the windows of heaven, and the Mayonas Tahim, you see. That was the Orishan, so the physical animal of the Orishan pouring out that destroyed the world. So it was the very thing that they should have brought destroyed them. Interesting. So what did Moshe do? So Moshe said, after Noach, after he came out of the table and all that, he said, I will no longer destroy the world, and I will no longer destroy the world, and he made the rainbow. The rainbow is a sign. I think that's where the arrow, you ever wonder where these bows and arrows come from? If you think about it, a rainbow is really a bow. But normally there's a peace gesture where the bow is turned toward you, so that means you won't turn it to a person. That's a peace gesture. Interesting, So the bow is turned toward the Baruch. You know what I'm saying? It goes like that, right? It doesn't go like this. So the rainbow is turned toward the Baruch. So that means that's the Baruch Shalom's physical symbol, that he will not destroy the entire world through, again, whether it be through water or whatever, and that was, of course, a mistake that Pari made. The Baruch Shalom won't destroy the world through water, so we can kill the Jews in water. But he reasoned falsely, because the Baruch Shalom won't destroy the entire world through water, or again, but he could destroy one nation. That was his mistake.
Do we know why Hashem said he's not going to destroy the world again?
Well, because he wants mankind to continue. So what the Russian did, what does that mean? So there's a Rashi, very interesting Rashi. The Rashi says that the Russian swore, in that sense, that he will no longer bring choshech and ibud, which is interesting. to the world. So what that means is that the Moshe said, I will no longer allow mankind to shut the door where all the holiness is given to the sun. So therefore there's a threshold that guarantees the world can survive. There's a threshold. Mankind can only give, let's say, 90% of the Kedusha to the sun. 10% is out of their control. So therefore there's a guarantee that they cannot destroy the world, even through their sins. So technically, even though they can be boicha, to be evil, but they can't destroy the world because they cannot give the Satan, let's say, more than 90% of the Kedusha. You see, so therefore, then there's always a mokum for Bechira, and so on. So that's the guarantee that the Rosh said, I will no longer bring darkness and evil destruction. How? By not allowing them this transference process, where all this Kedusha can go to the Satan.
Where does that
There's a limit.
10% Kedusha go? This is in limbo?
It doesn't go. You cannot transfer it, no matter how bad you are. I mean, today, they say that today, Noach, the generation of Noach would be embarrassed about what's going on today. That's what they say. It's very likely, it's like they say even a sailor would blush, we're not talking about tzaddikim, we're talking about sailors, That's no slur against the Navy, of course, but anyway. So, because this generation is really, it's for the pits, but I'm tremendously afraid of this generation, because they're playing around, if you don't realize, It's important to say that they are playing around, they are tempting the Virgin. How? Because what was the ultimate sin that destroyed the world? Mishkav Zocha, homosexuality. That was it. Shinoi Min. Everybody was with everybody else. It was no longer man and woman. It was man and man, all this kind of stuff. That's Shinoi Min. Even the animals were not doing it anymore.
Did you say it was Geneva?
It was a whole bunch of things, but one of the important things was Shinoi Min. It's homosexuality and so on, whatever they call it, same-sex marriages and so on and so on. So Moshe said enough is enough. Because you guys won't even propagate. It's ridiculous. There's nothing left, What's happening now? Homosexuality. And one state after the other, now they are legally sanctioning. It's one thing if there's closet stuff, but they are legally sanctioning this.
Morris says three things Goyim don't do. One is they don't write a star. They don't want a star in Mishkav Zocha. Nowadays they do.
Of course, yeah. And I'll tell you something very interesting, which is a Sudifam and Enechanami. Where was the first marble? People don't understand this. Katrina. What was Katrina? It's a mini marble. Why? So I remember when it hit, was it 2005 Katrina hit? So I wasn't sure what's going on, And then I saw something. I was just stunned because the storm hit. Katrina hit on Monday. Then on Tuesday it went over the levees, and drowned the whole city. Why? And I was very bothered because Katrina isn't just a hurricane. It was a mini marble. It's a marble. That's exactly what it was. Except it wasn't the marble that destroyed the earth. It destroyed the city, and so on. But the Russian doesn't do that. He usually doesn't destroy cities. You saw a little section here and there. Sandy. What was Sandy? A marble. Don't you see what's happening? First there was a city, and now it's the whole East Coast. It's moving up. And these fools, the American fools, don't understand what's about them. I'm tremendously afraid of earthquakes in California, because there's a Yerushalmi, where somebody went over to Eliyahu Novi, and he asked him, why the earthquakes? Interesting, it's Yerushalmi. I forgot who the Tana was on Murrah. Anyway, he asked Eliyahu Novi, he's the guy to ask, right? Why the earthquake? Why? You know what Eliyahu answered him? Mishkav Zocha. And we know there's a major San Andreas fault that goes down California. Pachad Neira. And this stuff is coming out of California. It's all over the world. But they have no idea what they're playing around with the same thing that destroyed. I forgot to tell you. So Katrina, I read, is that Wednesday, New Orleans has a holiday called Southern Decadence Day. By the title alone, you can figure out what's going on. It's where everything in New Orleans is mutter. That means there's open sexual activity, homosexuality, whatever, goes and the police officers look away. That's called sudden decadence day. So it comes out that Wednesday was a holiday for what? For Shinoi Zoch, for Mishkav Zocha, homosexuality. It's beyond belief, you know? And that was legally sanctioned, and that was supposed to be on Wednesday. So in came the storm on Monday, went over the levees Tuesday, flattened the city. Guess what? They didn't have Sudden Decadence Day.
And nobody mentioned it.
Nobody, which is astounding. I remember when I saw that, I said, it's incredible. There it is. What the Baomer said is, oh no, you guys are not going to do this. I'm going to wipe you guys out with the same thing that he wiped out the Bria, the whole world, in the days of Noah. It's unbelievable. It's incredible. Nobody sees this. So that was Katrina. But of course America doesn't wake up. So along comes Sandy. And Sandy did a number, not on a city. Sandy wiped out the East Coast, all the way from Florida up to New Jersey, really got it, and New York. Because, and they, all the way up to Boston and so on, because what's happening? Because Mishkav Zacha, same thing. It's incredible when you think about that. So I'm very concerned about what's about to happen. So Baomer gives them, there's a respite, okay. Let's see if you guys get it, But I'm very worried. America, something is going to happen. And you should know, I felt also even before Katrina, not Katrina, I felt even before Sandy that something is going to happen bad. Really bad, and it did with Sandy.
But if there's a
I had the
trend,
same.
if society has a trend, like whatever you said, that things are happening and people don't wake up, does Hashem give them the seichel to understand what's going on? Because there's a wave going now that people are like, the three matter.
It's one state after the other.
The question is,
and the big thing, right now, I don't know if you know it, but I think it's in front of the Supreme Court. I think now this issue of same-sex marriages is in front of the Supreme Court. If that Supreme Court mutters it, then it becomes the law of the land. What would I advise? Move, get out of America. Because America is going to be hit with something you never even thought about.
What makes this virus so bad compared to other viruses? I mean, there are many viruses.
Well, the number one, first was the Chayav Misa. Terrorism Chayav.
There are many other viruses.
What?
There are many other viruses, but this seems to be singled out.
You know why? Because if there's Mishkav Zocha, that's the end of mankind. There's no reproduction going on. And now that, you should know what, which is also very important. There's so much to say. It's just, I really want to get to Baomer, but anyway. You should know one thing. The danger of all of this, you should know, when a person is born, fundamentally, he doesn't have an orientation toward the other sex. He's bisexual. When a person is born, a person is bisexual. He can go either way when he's born. But in society, he learns to address his drive to one way, heterosexuality. You see, it's an important concept. How do we see this as true? Because all the Greeks were homosexuals. You can have one guy, but how do you have the whole nation? And the answer is because that's a teva adam. Because what happened is they're born where they can go either way. And Greek culture looked down at being with a woman. They looked down at it. In fact, I don't even get what the Greeks did. There was Shreklich and so on, They admired the human form. That's why there's so many naked statues in Greece and so on, So therefore, as a result of that, so therefore, if that's an alternative lifestyle, so people who would never become that now say, well, why not? What keeps a person straight? The answer is the society, because society does not condone it. They forbid it. They look down at it. It's morally, forbidden and so on, So therefore, a person will orient himself in a normal way toward what's called heterosexuality, not homosexuality. But what happens if you go into a society, right, that it's okay? It's called a legitimate alternative lifestyle, you see? Where you see guys walking down the street, two men hand in hand, you know what I'm saying, which you're already seeing, you know what I'm saying? Or two women or whatever. That's the end of the min. It's the end of it. And not only that, it's going to corrupt everybody because the obstacle against homosexuality is removed. There's the problem because now it's a legitimate alternative lifestyle. And the Moshe will not have that because that's the end of society. You think about that. The end of the kiyum of the bria. Guys do chatan, it's one thing. Usually it's individual. And even if it's public, it doesn't threaten the existence of mankind. This does. And that's what's called a red line. Even by the Moshe, it's called a red line. And it will destroy, without mercy. You see with Sandy? Sandy was incredible. And it's just when Sandy came ashore, he came ashore just south of Atlantic City, which is an interesting place altogether, right? And it wasn't supposed to, because most of the time these things go out to sea. Instead, it veered left.
It was scary.
It veered left, went over New Jersey into New York.
The map showed it. It's like usually hurricanes have a very broad sweep.
Yeah.
This one had a broad sweep, then went wham right into New York.
Yeah. Well, that's a good minute. Again, it's Katrina getting closer. Very bad news and so on. Anyway, this is what happened. So therefore, it's very, very worrisome. Based on these ideas. But in any case, so therefore, this was supposed to be the Geula. Okay. In any case, now, the important idea by Noach is when did this happen? When? So the Torah says that on the 18th day, it started on the 17th, but went into the 18th. The first day was 17th, 18th of the second month, the Torah says. In the second month, the 18th day of the second month, Niftachu Mayonis and so on and so forth, right? That's when it happened. So what I'm saying is that the Or Rishon should have come down. In the 18th of Cheshvan, that was the day of the Or Rishon, if you think about that. Right? Everybody follow me? Because that was the day of Gula. So instead it became water. Yes? But was it really supposed to come down on the 18th? No. It was supposed to come down on the 11th. Why didn't the Mabul happen on the 11th? Because Mr. Shelach died. So in honor of Mr. Shelach, the Moshe waited 7 days. So it comes out that the 11th day of Cheshvan, Yud Aleph Cheshvan, yes, is the day of Geula. Interesting, isn't it? So instead it came down on the 18th because of the death of Mr. Shelach. The Moshe didn't want to shter, he didn't want to interrupt the Shiva. Shows you who Mr. Shelach was, the longest living person, 969 years. But he was a Murdik Tzaddik, obviously, and so on. And then, so therefore comes out that not the 18th, but the 11th is the day of redemption, which is interesting. And on that day, Rachel died. When she died, what did she do? Right? She died in the very spot that hundreds of years later, right? Klal Yisrael, right? Nebuchadnezzar would destroy the Beis Hamikdash, and they would, on their way to Babylon, because that's what he did, they would pass by her kever, right? And they would pray at her graveside. And she would stand in front of the Rosh Mevaka Aboneho, that Rachel saved. She's the one who redeemed Israel. It's incredible because of her schus. And there's an incredible medrash where the medrash says that the Jews were going into Golus. And they were supposed to be in Golus for years. That was it. So they all prayed in front of her kever because she was buried in the very place strategically that they were going to pass. You see, that's why she died. And when did she die? In the 11th day of Cheshvan, which is interesting. So they went and they prayed to her and so on. That she should be a Melech Yosha. She should be a lawyer, an advocate for them. So she appeared in front of Hashem. So it says in the Medrash, incredible Medrash, where everybody was trying to get the Jews that the Golas should not last for thousands of years. So you had Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. It was a who's who in Jewry that were trying to annul the decree. That okay, let them go in Golas, but not for 1,000 years. So none of them, all of them failed. Interesting. They all failed. And so on. So finally, Rachel appears before the Moshe. Famous story. So Rachel Mavako Beneho means she came, and she gave a taina, and that taina won. So that's why the Moshe says, let your tears be diminished, because they will come back to their land. The question is, what's she saying? And the answer is that everybody wanted to depend on this schus, the merit. And it's based on this merit, you have to save them and so on. Rachel said, no, we have no merits for this. Okay? So then why? Because she said, listen, you know, Yaakov wanted to marry me, but I realized that my sister was doomed to be the wife of Esav, or, you know, and she's gone. She's out. So what I did is so Yaakov gave me a password, because he knew that Lavan would try to switch. So he gave me a password, and I gave that password to my sister, Leah, you see. And therefore, Yaakov thought that Leah was already Rachel. So therefore, Leah became one of the mothers of Klal Yisrael, right? So Rachel says, I didn't have to do that. It's no mitzvah. Not only that, I endangered myself. Because imagine you want to marry a girl, and that girl switches with some other woman, her sister, right? You'd say to the girl, get out. You're actually part of the conspiracy. You're part of the conspiracy to do what? That you should wind up marrying somebody else? So she endangered her entire status as an Aim B'Yisrael, as a mother, a matriarch of Israel. She didn't have to do it. So therefore she said, I went lefnim meshuras hadin. I didn't have to do this. I went beyond the measure of justice, you see. So therefore, even if Klal Yisrael doesn't deserve to be redeemed, you also should go beyond the measure of justice and redeem them anyway. And that one, because her taina was go beyond the measure of justice. It's true that in terms of justice, they're finished. So all the other people tained through justice, and the Baruch said, I'm sorry, they deserve this, for whatever reason. But she said, no, you know, I was not jealous of my sister. I jeopardized my entire standing in the Jewish people, right, for my sister Leah. I went to Flimishus Adin. I went beyond the measure of justice. In that schus, you also go, even if they deserve it, go beyond. And the Moshe said, you're right, I will do it. So she single-handedly reduced the amount of exile that the Jews would have had, maybe for 2,000 years or whatever, to 70 years. Unbelievable. And when did she die? Yud HaCheshvan, which is a day of the Orishan, because she redeemed Klal Yisrael, which is the Gula, you see. And in general, the Rachel and Yosef, these people anyway have connection with Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is always giving up Mesiras Nefesh to help the Jews. Yosef went to Egypt, and Moshe Rabbeinu is buried in Chutz La'aretz. And she's buried, Rachel's not even buried with the Amoris. She's buried alone on the way. Why? Because she's in the Klippa. Her being apart from Klal Yisrael, apart from Yaakov, is that his neshama, her neshama suffers, and that suffering is a kapara for Klal Yisrael. Therefore, you're Yud HaCheshvan. You know? So you begin to see that it's a tremendous day of Geula. Okay, we got that? So Klal Yisrael realized that Rachel Imenu, she could pull it off. She can get us out of the Golas. So therefore, on that Yud HaCheshvan, she died, and she took to redeem Klal Yisrael from Golas. So they go to her because they intuitively realize that the hands of Geula, right, or the ability to end the exile, is in her hands. Interesting. That's why Klal Yisrael goes to Rachel. See? It's interesting. I, in a certain way, feel attached to that because my birthday is Yud HaCheshvan, which is interesting, yeah. So I see it as an attachment that I can understand Rachel's passion to redeem her, you know, and so on. Anyway, now, what does that? Okay, so that we understand Rachel Imenu, right? What about Rab Shimon? What about Rab Shimon Yochai? Oh, so there's a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. When was the world created? Right? So Rabbi Eliezer holds the world was created in Tishrei, right? Right? Aleph Tishrei was created. The world was created on the 25th day of Elul, and Adam Rishon was made on the first day of Tishrei. That's when it was made. Rabbi Yeshua says no. Nisan, that's when it was. So the world was created on the 25th day of Adar, and the first of Nisan, that's when it was created. So the Torah only says, but it refers to Noach, what? Refers to Noach, it says in the 18th day of what? Of the second month. Well, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the 18th day of the second month is Cheshvan. But according to Rabbi Yeshua, when is the 18th day of the second month? Like Baomer. That's when it is. And Rab Shimon died on Lag Baomer. Why? Because what happened on the 18th day? The Orishan came down as its physical analog as what? As water. But Rab Shimon did what? He revealed the Zoya, which is the Orishan, which is really the beginning, the surface of the Orishan. You see, so he was masakin that. And that's why he died on the very day that the marble came down, which is the Orishan, but then it came down as water. When he died, so he died on the 33rd day of the Omer, right, to illustrate that he revealed to the world the beginning of the Orishan, which is the Zohar. You see, so he dies on that day, right, which is, and his main contribution was the Zohar, which is the surface of the Orishan. So he dies on that day, that what came down, not the water, what came down on that day is the Orishan. That's why he dies on the 33rd. So again, that's the Gula. Rabbi Shimon was the maschil, the haschol of the Gula, by introducing the Zohar, the Kabbalah itself. Amazing. So 18th of Cheshvan, 18th of the second month, which is Nisan Iyar, right? So the 18th day of Iyar is Baomer. You see. So therefore, Klal Yisrael intuitively knows that what? That Rabbi Shimon also has a hand in the Gula process. So they all gather around Rabbi Shimon, even though they don't know. Because Rachel and Rabbi Shimon are tied to the Messianic process, you see. And what do you see? What's one of the proofs of that? Is the Gemara says that in the days of Rabbi Shimon, there was no rainbow in Eretz Yisrael. No rainbow. And we know, because the rainbow is supposed to be the sign that stops the Rebbeinu, reminds him, so to speak, not to destroy the world. So since Rabbi Shimon was Masakin, rectified that, no need for the rainbow. You don't need a rainbow. Because the Rebbeinu doesn't have to be reminded, because the beginning of the Messianic process, the Zohar, began, right? So therefore, there's no need for the rainbow, and therefore in the generation of Rabbi Shimon, when he lived, there was no rainbow. Interesting. You know, at least in Eretz Yisrael, there was no rainbow for his entire life. It's astounding, isn't it? You see. So therefore, Klal Yisrael intuitively knows what? That Roch Rimenu on Yudal Cheshvan and Rabbi Shimon, unlike Baomer, these people have shaykh's connection to the redemption itself. So Klal Yisrael goes to them to pray, you know. So that's why you have this Lag Baomer, where you have probably 250,000 people in the Lag Baomer, and what do they light? What goes on there? What goes on there?
Fire.
Bonfires. What's the fire a symbol of? The Or Rishon. Right? It's like Klal Yisrael knows intuitively when to go, who to go, and what to do. Do they know? Probably not. But they intuitively, because if they're not prophets, they are the children of prophets. So therefore they know what to do. Interesting,
So
isn't
why
it?
do we sing the praises of an Adam, of a man? Usually we all focus all our tefillas and all, not tefillas, but all our praises to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
No. It's not that we don't pray. We don't pray to the man. We pray that he should be a Midat Yosha. He should be a good advocate for us, because clearly, you know, he's the one who introduced the Orishan surface, and Rachel is the one who got him out of Golos. I mean, that's fundamentally those are the redemption, part of the redemption
But the
process.
songs are all like how great he was.
He was.
So I'm just saying, why
He
are
was a
we
very
singing
great
his
man.
praises?
He was-
That may be, why are we sing his praises?
Because of what he did, you know, the average guy can't do that. I mean,
You said like when is Yud Ches, Yud Aleph?
Yud Aleph then, but it's like the theoretical was Yud Aleph. The actual was Yud Ches because of Mr. Selach's death.
And
So-
that transferred for that same Ches transferred.
It's to him, yeah. Which is interesting if you think about it, right? Every month has some type of a Jewish holiday, yes? Except Cheshvan, right? Cheshvan, the month of Cheshvan has nothing. In fact, that's why you call it Mar Cheshvan. Mar means bitter. That Cheshvan is the only month that has nothing Jewish about it. Why? Because Yud Aleph Cheshvan is the day of the Orishan. So it almost sounds like that when the Mashiach comes, right, Yud Aleph Cheshvan, right, when the Mashiach comes, that Cheshvan will have the greatest holiday of all. Because of the schus, because that Yud Aleph Cheshvan is the day of the Orishan. It's interesting. And therefore, since Cheshvan will capture the Jewish spirit, the greatest Kedusha, doesn't need any holiday now. Everybody else needs a holiday to spark up the Kedusha. But Cheshvan will outshine them all. There are 2 days that will outshine everybody. What are they? Yud Aleph Cheshvan and Tisha B'Av. Because the Gemara says that the Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. Does that mean he's born on Tisha B'Av? No. But what it means that if you observe Tisha B'Av, the source will give rise to the Mashiach. So it's the observance of Tisha B'Av that makes the Mashiach born, and so on. But those 2 days, Tisha B'Av will be a Yom Tov, incredible Yom Tov. It will be Nepach, from Simcha, Yogim to Simcha, and Yud al Cheshvan. So therefore, this is the concept of why Klal Yisrael celebrates. Yud al Cheshvan, Ochel Imenu, and also Reb Shimon, which is interesting. Like I say, it's the bonfires. That's the order. Automatically they do. They go to the right person on the right day with the right avodah, which is they light fires. The whole place is like just burning, all that stuff. So this is the pinius. I know something that's hardly known. So if you guys ever go to Baomer, to Meron, you know exactly what you're doing. You see, it's interesting. I just find it interesting that clients will always seem to do the right thing, even if they don't know why they're doing it. But I always find that to be very interesting. Anyway, that's like Baomer. Okay, again, so what I'd like to do is should learn. They don't do this kind of stuff, Although I don't know if it's true. There's a lot of literature that go to Meron.
They sneak in.
Yeah, they go. By now everywhere, there's so many Sfardim and Ashkenazim and literature, Hasidic, they're all there. It's thousands and 250,000 people. Incredible amount, I find the problem is that the whole area is very small. You imagine 250,000 people packed into that place. It's really, you can't even feel that. You ever been to Maronia?
Once.
Once?
I can't even go in.
You went, come on.
Yeah, and they're having a bigger problem this year.
It's,
Because
security.
It's not fire. No.
Who?
Fire problems. It's very drugged right now. They say they're really worried about fires.
All you need is one spark, ignite the whole place.
It's very worried.
You mean there was no rain?
Unless we could.
Well, that's, yeah. But it's also security. Look what this crazy guy did, in Boston. Michigan guy. Unbelievable, Islam is the only religion in the world that will do this. That will kill innocent people because they don't believe in their machine, their stuff. There's no religion on earth that will do that. It's just incredible what this guy did. But in a certain sense, I believe it's midah connected midah. The Hashem says to America, especially with what Obama's doing, is this being recorded? Well, America